Honorable Member for Dennery North.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, colleagues. Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of the motion as presented by the Honorable Prime Minister. This motion is of particular interest to myself as the Parliamentary Rep for Dennery North, who also happens to be a resident of the constituency. It is not unheard of for parliamentary representatives to come to the Parliament and express the concerns and the interests of their constituents, albeit from a distance, knowing that they do not reside in the constituencies that they represent. But for me, Mr. Speaker, this is a moment that I ought to be very proud of. It is an intervention that will impact me personally, but more importantly, impact all the communities of Dennery North. But with your indulgence, Mr. Speaker, I want to take the opportunity to add my personal congratulations to the many persons who have publicly expressed their gratitude to Gillian Alfred, given what she has done for our country. Ms. Alfred won the silver medal at the Youth Olympics in the 100 meters. And what it has done, Mr. Speaker, is that it has once again reminded us of this rich repository of sporting talent that St. Lucia is. And that if we put proper programs and structures in place, have the proper support mechanisms for athletes, we can achieve what persons believe rightfully belong in their minds to the more developed countries. And so I was not surprised that Gillian was able to win that medal at the Youth Olympics. I remember when she was at the Leon Hess Comprehensive School, Mr. Speaker, she got a scholarship opportunity to go to Jamaica, finish her secondary school program in Jamaica at the same time working on her athletic talent. And through the National Lotteries Authority, we were able to provide support to Gillian. We were able to provide the sum of, and it might not be much in the context of what is being spent in St. Lucia today, but we were able, yes, the minister's account, we were able to provide Gillian with approximately 20,000 Jamaican dollars to basically take care of her needs on a daily basis in Jamaica. And today, I watched the news and I watched the footage, and I am extremely proud of the intervention that we made for Gillian to get her to where she is today. Now, we are not taking credit for anything. What I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, and the point I'm trying to underscore here, is that if we have the requisite support structures in place for these athletes, we can achieve a lot more than we have as a country in the global sporting realm. And I want to echo those sentiments in Creole. Je veux dire that moi ka souhaiter Gillian Alfred tout ça qui bon, et moi veux dire félicitations pour ça il a fait by pays nous pour un Youth Olympics qui était tapé chaîne en Argentina. Plus bon moi ça il gagne une médaille by St. Lucie. And Mr. Speaker, the minister in his statement earlier on said it, and it is something that I concur with. I think she is the brightest athletic talent that we have at the moment. And it would be a travesty on our part as a country, not just the government, but all of us as a country, if Gillian is not given the support that she needs at this critical juncture of her career to ensure that 3-4 years down the road, we can have our first senior medal at the Olympics. Gillian Alfred is a resource that must be managed very carefully. She must get all the support that she needs. And as I said, I believe if those mechanisms are put in place, not only will she develop to become the world-class athlete that she's on her way to becoming, but it will happen in a time period that is much faster than we can believe. Mr. Speaker, back to the motion. I want to state that the tabling of this motion for the Dennery North Water Redevelopment Project is welcome news, as I said, for myself and for my constituents in Dennery North and the Mabuya Valley, who have waited for decades to have this water problem resolved once and for all. The fact that phase 2 is only now being discussed in the Parliament of St. Lucia today, Mr. Speaker, should serve as a reminder. And you must take into consideration that when the project was first conceived, it was supposed to have been completed in the year 2015. But the fact that we are here in 2018 talking about phase 2 is a timely reminder of the exceedingly long gestation period that some government projects can take. And so, with all the bureaucracy and the hiccups, sometimes due to no fault of ours, the people are the ones who suffer and they're the ones who have to endure. So today, I am extremely pleased that the government has come to the Parliament to seek the authority and approval of the Parliament to borrow from the Caribbean Development Bank roughly $22 million for the completion of phase 2. At a previous sitting in this honorable house, the member for Babono, who has land responsibility for water resources, said to me across the table, Mr. Speaker, that among other things, I was busy taking pictures at the treatment plant at the completion of phase 1, but that my government had put nothing in place to ensure that there was funding for phase 2. That is not entirely correct. And I was relieved this morning when I heard the Prime Minister himself say that what we are doing here this morning is basically seeking approval to amend an existing agreement with the Caribbean Development Bank. And I know for a fact that the General Manager of WASCO did inform the PS in agriculture by way of writing that the Caribbean Development Bank at a board meeting in May of 2015, prior to the general elections of 2016, that at a board meeting, the CDB had approved the loan agreement for phase 2 of the Dennery Water Redevelopment project. So here this morning, Mr. Speaker, we are basically making an alteration to an agreement that was already in existence. Mr. Speaker, when I took to the campaign trail in 2011, and I offered myself to the people of Dennery North, I campaigned heavily on the situation that existed as it related to water resources in the constituency. The problem, as I said earlier on, had existed for decades. And for many, many years, the people of the valley had to consume water that was of a substandard quality. And in cases where the supply was reaching households and certain communities, Mr. Speaker, the quality was very much compromised. So we had a double jeopardy case, so to speak. Insufficiency in terms of supply and poor quality. Mr. Speaker, in the late 80s, or late 70s and 80s, bilharzia wreaked havoc in the Dennery North community. And I can recall as a child, a primary school child, I can remember very vividly personnel from PAO, the Ministry of Health, and other stakeholder agencies coming into the constituency of Dennery North and handing us toddlers containers that are kind of similar to what we package butter in at the supermarket. And those were being handed to us in the community. And we were being encouraged that instead of using the toilets, we could use those containers as substitutes. And that was their way of collecting data to get to the bottom of the bilharzia problem that was wreaking havoc in the constituency. As a result of that, we had a very high infant mortality rate in the Mabuya Valley. Babies and children were dying because of the ingestion of contaminated water. Lo and behold, the PAO, the Ministry of Health, and the other agencies were able to get to the bottom of this, and we were able to solve that particular problem. But Mr. Speaker, the problem manifested itself in a different form in the 1980s into the 1990s. So whereas there was an improvement in quality, we had a situation where in that rush to cultivate banana and to get from the green gold dollar, residents resorted to deforestation on a very large scale. The forest, sections of the forest was destroyed, the watershed was compromised, and that resulted in a significant decline in the volume of water that was available for consumption. So, Mr. Speaker, the forest was destroyed. People started growing bananas on very large scales and even small scales on the hillside. compromising the water quality and supply. Also, the use of agrochemicals traces of agrochemicals were being found in the water downstream. And I recall reading a report from WASCO that was done in collaboration with what at the time we knew as CE, but I think they're known as CAFA today. The report, Madam Speaker, had nothing favorable to say about the quality of water that was at the disposal of the people of Dennery North. And so I campaigned on the premise that a Central Labour Party government would address the water situation in Dennery North. That particular cry, which I echoed on behalf of my people, found favor with the then Prime Minister and member for Vieux-Fort South. He gave me the assurance that we were going to do something about the Dennery water redevelopment, the water situation in Dennery North. The member for Labrie, who was the external minister in the Central Labour Party government, went globe-trotting, trying to get resources to cause the government to tackle the Dennery North water situation once and for all. Membre parlement pour la Boui, qui était ministre qui tenait responsabilité pour les affaires étrangères en dernier gouvernement Léba. Il allait tout partout où la terre, qu'a try joindre l'argent pour aider le gouvernement à adresser le problème de l'eau en Vallée Mabouya et puis Dennery North. Premier côté, moi, quand y aller, c'était Morocco pour try parler et puis gouvernement Morocco pour qui assistance yo ça bail. Ça parti bon nous ça nous développer. It was on the margins of an OAS meeting in Guatemala in 2012 that the member for Labrie, in his capacity at the time as External Affairs Minister, engaged his foreign affairs counterpart from Mexico, and it was there that an agreement was brokered and Mexico agreed to fund the Dennery North Water Redevelopment Project. C'est dans un meeting Guatemala, meeting OAS en 2012. Membre parlement pour la Boui qui était ministre qui tenait responsabilité pour affaires étrangères. C'est là il parlait puis un ministre Mexico avec Mexico prend décision et puis membre parlement pour la Boui that you take time fait l'argent available pour ranger situation glo en Dennery North. Et me changer Mr. Speaker, there were a lot of meetings that preceded the actual commencement of the project. I remember there was a cooperation agreement signing between then Prime Minister and member for Vieux-Fort South, Dr. Anthony, and the then Mexican ambassador, Ambassador Moreno. And at the cooperation agreement, which was well attended by stakeholders from Mesoamerican Bank in Latin America, UNOPS, the United Nations Office of Project Services, WASCO, community-based organizations, all of them were represented at that particular meeting. And it was then, Mr. Speaker, I started seeing once and for all that progress was being made. At the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, Mexico agreed that they were going to provide approximately $5 million to tackle the problem of the Dennery North Water Redevelopment Project. Mais 5 millions la américain qui Mexico te promet pas te gagner assez pour adresser tous ces problèmes là. Et bien bonnet en gouvernement, nous la ça pas te gagner assez. Et c'est pour raison ça qui fait gouvernement Liba mettez en application devant Caribbean Development Bank et pour demander plus l'argent pour faire ça en anglais, nous avons créé phase 2 of the project. Et comme on dit plus bonnet, Mr. Speaker, the loan agreement with the CDB has been adjusted slightly, and I don't think it is unusual for governments to do so. You come in, you find a particular agreement has been in existence, and of course it is in your purview to make adjustments and alterations as you see fit. But what is most important and most critical this morning is the fact that the Dennery North Water Redevelopment Project Phase 2 will be coming on stream, and I think the biggest beneficiaries of such an initiative will be the people of the Mabouya Valley and Dennery North. So, Mr. Speaker, whereas we are here for the loan, and just to mention some of the attempts that have been made to ameliorate that particular problem over the years. I remember, Mr. Speaker, there was a proposed damming of the Tonnes River in the 1980s and 90s with French funding. That did not happen. Mr. Speaker, the Global Environment Fund, known as GEF, through an initiative known as IWCAM, Integrated Watershed and Coastal Management Area in Small Island Developing States, they too had a presence in the Mabuya Valley and in Dennery North, geared at addressing the water situation in the valley. Their focus was on the harvesting of rainwater, and they too knew that that particular initiative would not have solved the problem in its entirety. But as a stopgap measure, it was supposed to help ameliorate the situation, particularly when things were critical. The St. Lucia Social Development Fund, the SSDF, they attempted to intervene as well by making water storage tanks available to the residents of the community. Mr. Speaker, a private non-profit company of Osbert Duvine, registered in 2006, known as the MDI, the Mabuya Development Institute, proposed a solution to the problem. They were saying at the time that they could have gotten $12 million in the form of grant funding from the European Union. A proposal, to the best of my recollection, was prepared, and the word on the ground at the time is that the architect of that proposal had serious issues with the government of the day, and as a result, that went nowhere. That was one of the many attempts at ameliorating the water problem in Dennery North. And finally, Mr. Speaker, this partnership that I mentioned between the government of Mexico and the government of St. Lucia bore fruit. And that is why today we have phase 1 of the Dennery North Water Redevelopment Project having been completed. And I will do in much the same way that I did at the opening ceremony for that commissioned phase 1. I will register my gratitude and my thanks to all the major stakeholders who would have contributed to make phase 1 realizable. But Mr. Speaker, to give you a chronological sequence of how this happened, as I said, in May, not in May, but in 2011, I campaigned on the delivery of fresh drinking water to the people of Dennery North. In 2012, we met with the government of Mexico through the External Affairs Minister, and we were given the nod that we would have gotten assistance in that regard. In 2013, I remember leading a technical team from UNOPS, WASCO, and the Mexican government on a constituency field trip, which at the time the Mexicans referred to as a Ficha Technica. And all it means is that they're doing a technical feasibility to see if what we were requesting of them could have happened. Today I'm happy to report that not only was it able to happen, but phase 1 has actually happened. In 2014, Mexico's foreign minister, His Excellency Jose Antonio Cabrera, reaffirmed his government's commitment to the project on a visit to St. Lucia in February of 2014. And although his main reason for being in St. Lucia at the time was to promote St. Lucia's attendance, or to ask for St. Lucia's attendance at the ACS summit, which was being hosted by the Mexican government. But he also profited the opportunity to reassure us at a meeting at Bellevue Hotel that they were on board with that particular project. In 2015, the cooperation agreement was signed, and the project funds were released in 2015. Contracts for design build signed in 2016. In 2017, civil works started, and phase 1 was commissioned in the year 2018. Mr. Speaker, as we speak now, the people of Tamazo, the people of Fournier, the people of Lower Montparnasse, Lower Dibonnaire, the people of Richfort, in particular New Village and La Belleville, are benefiting and are enjoying some of the best treated water in the OECS as a result of the completion of phase 1. But phase 1 has its limitations. And so communities such as Dennery Rivière, Despines, Olion, New Jack Montego Bay, Sédény, La Rivière, Gadet, Tigadet, La Jejet, Austin Hill, Belmont, all of these communities today, Mr. Speaker, have to continue to rely on the Dennery River intake, which has a number of issues in terms of the quality of water that we get from that particular intake and the unreliability of the supply that comes from those areas. People have been agitating for phase 2. And as a responsible parliamentary representative, Mr. Speaker, I can tell you that many persons have come to my office asking that we stage protest and demonstration, because when the project was first conceived, the idea that was being tossed around at the time, and it was also almost an agreement with constituents, that we would have wiped out everybody's outstanding bills, and once the fresh supply had gotten to their homes, people would start paying for the quote-unquote new water, as they call it. But I had to tell them, Mr. Speaker, that, yes, they probably wanted to make a fresh start. But I had to tell them, Mr. Speaker, and I mean that sincerely as a responsible parliamentary rep, that in order to get the better quality water, paying the bills for the old water, so to speak, is something that they have to do to ensure that we move speedily to getting the clean water, as they call it. So today, Mr. Speaker, this will be good news for the people of Dennery River. The people of Oleon will be equally elated, as will be the people at Tillarisus, Lapel, and the other communities that stand to benefit from the completion of phase 2. Mr. Speaker, as the Prime Minister said in his presentation, water storage tanks will be constructed in selected areas. And I know that the land acquisition process started last year. I know some of the persons will be impacted in that regard. I know up until last week that they had cooperated fully with the powers that be to ensure that there were no major impediments as it relates to that particular project. Booster stations, or pumping stations as we call them, will be set up in strategic locations, particularly to serve the more elevated communities. There's some existing booster stations or pumping stations that have outlived their usefulness. There's one at Larisus, Mr. Speaker, in the vicinity of the health center. That will be upgraded. There's a new booster pumping station to be constructed in Dennery River, which the Prime Minister mentioned earlier on. Nous avons mis un pompe Dennery River, bon caille un homme qui a créé métro. Pompe glo ça supposé voyer glo monter Austin Hill pour ces gens qui ont resté en l'air là. Because pour plaisir l'année, Mr. Speaker, ces gens ça pour lever devant jour. Et gens, même famille, ne pourra travailler presque en shift system. Que si c'est toi aller dormir bonnet, yo ni pour lever devant jour pour les glo à venir, puis ça pas des bombes glo. Et situation ça c'est un qui a tapé quoi il fait en Oleon, Montpanache, Dibonnet, Belmont, Gadet, et c'est place ça que gloire parti à arriver. So c'est pas ça c'est nous ka welcome qu'on dit en anglais. Gloire qui tamazo pour le moment en phase 1. La ni glo qui s'arrive Dennery River. Mais on est pour engager ou est-ce qu'on est pour engager dans un processus qui a créé valving. Qu'on est pour fermer à d'un côté pour à l'autre côté joindre. Et ça y a dit on is the hydraulic capacities of the lines are insufficient. Pour ces tiroirs pas go assez pour mener l'eau à aller en ces places ça qui bougeent. Mais yo autre cas dit nous that même si yo fermé valve avec nous gagne ça pas rien bon bail because ça met nous dans une situation où c'est pas toute commune en Valia qui gagne l'eau même là. So moi bien content Mr. Speaker et comme dit là moi commencer là, je viens ici à parler about problème glow constituency moi. Moi pas parler because the monde dit moi aller dire ça because c'est ça monde blatant. Tout ça mon constituency moi qu'a expériencer et puis problème glow c'est ça moi qu'a expériencer contre tout l'autre monde. Là l'appli crevé les bon matin après 10 minutes l'appli crevé si Wasco pas fermer glow ça nous qu'a joindre en cité nous qu'a fait nous square that nous just fini faire un job juste tamaouin. Gloire sale. Mais comme je dis, je suis content que l'année prochaine, car l'année et demie encore, ça a un problème que nous n'avons pas encore. Je vais changer de travailler avec le ministre des Affaires Jeunesse, comme ministre for Youth Development and Sports. À dans ce moment qui a venu travailler le bon matin, au cas où il y a eu Et là, pour qui raison ou garder des comporter comme ça? Vous avez dit moi Wasco parti ba yo glo pour whole weekend là. Et regardez yo sur ça peut cher. Only weekend dans ba glo. Là ni mon panage go rivière. Là ni moun kon Aidan qui a resté en tête Austin Hill en dernière rivière. Là ni moun en tête Montego Bay qui pour go glo pour l'année. Years. I'm not talking about a few months or weeks or days without water, you know. I'm talking about years. There are children who attend secondary school who had never seen running water in their homes in certain pockets of the Mabuya Valley as recent as last year and earlier this year, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, we need to say thank you as a community, and I've been given that parliamentary responsibility to come here and express the collective gratitude of all the residents of my constituency for that particular initiative. I am particularly pleased with the fact that this Labour Party initiated project was allowed to go through. I must admit I was extremely nervous when there was a change of government, given what had happened in the earlier days of this current administration, where certain projects were being stopped. But I am extremely grateful that this project has been allowed to continue. And as I've said before in this honorable house, anything n'importe bail je Dennery North End, hot gouvernement, qui c'est Labour Party qui en power, qui c'est Flambeau qui en power, ça c'est bagay nous deserve. You know why? Because during the days of Green Gold, when millions of banana revenue was coming in this country to build infrastructure in Rodney Bay and everywhere else in this country, it was the banana revenue that was responsible for that. And it was the people of the Mabuya Valley who used to wake up at 4:30 in the morning and 5 o'clock in the morning, head into those farms to deflower and to harvest bananas, to cause them to go to Europe to sustain a very healthy revenue stream for this country. So today, Mr. Speaker, we rightfully deserve what is coming our way. I think we deserve a lot more. But the Trinidadians have a thing saying, Mr. Speaker, it's an adage in Trinidad that ingratitude is worse than witchcraft. I do not want us to be accused of being in that or for that particular expression to be ascribed to us. And so once again, on the collective behalf of all the good people of Dennery North, I want to thank the government for bringing this motion to the Parliament, and I look forward to work on phase 2 starting sooner than later, and that at the completion of phase 2, the entire Mabuya Valley Dennery North constituency will be benefiting from some of the best treated water in the entire Caribbean. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.